This watch is really good. But what actually is it? Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to my full review of the latest release by French micro brand Baltic. This one arrived in Sydney late last year, and it was one of 4 watches that I took on my Christmas break to give it a proper tryout before giving you my thoughts in this video. I've looked at 5 Baltic watches now, and this is definitely my favourite, but I don't quite know what it is. I love to pigeonhole watches. Dive watch, tool dive watch, retro dive watch, Garda, dress watch, etc, etc, you get the idea. But this one has me a little bit stumped. It doesn't really fit neatly into any particular box. Now, you saw the pop-up. This video is sponsored by Baltic. I will of course therefore leave a link to their website in the description of the video. You can have a look for yourself. There are 4 different colour variants of this Hermetique Tourer available. Now I chose brown because I like brown, but as you can see here, they're promoting the watch on an FKM rubber tropic strap, which I think is part of my confusion. A bracelet is available as a cost option, but that's not how they sent it to me, so that's obviously not how they want the watch to be seen, and therefore to be bought. What do you think? Which box would you fit it into if you had to? Leave me a comment, let me know your thoughts. So while we get into the packaging, I'll tell you why I have been impressed with this Hermetique. As I said, I've looked at a number of Baltics on the channel in the past, and my conclusion has always been broadly the same. They're for people who want the look and the feel of a vintage watch, but with more modern materials, a modern movement, and a substantial 2-year warranty. Vintage is a minefield if you don't know what you're doing, and a Baltic makes much more sense for most people if you're wearing a watch as a daily. You've all seen this packaging before, I'm sure. Very nice, very neat. I do like the cork box. 2-year warranty with this one and all other Baltics. And just like all the other Baltics that I have looked at, this one is assembled in France. One other nice thing I noted with this one was a time grapher result print off for the Miyota movement. You don't see that very often, but it's nice when you do see it. And this is a very attractive little watch. Now I do say little watch. Baltics tend to be smaller than average. All of them I think are sub 40, and this Hermetique is no different. It's 37mm in diameter with a thickness of just under 11. I measure it at 10.9mm. Lug to lug of 46mm. Thankfully though, it does have 20mm lug width. Now as supplied on the FKM rubber tropic, it weighs in at a mere 72 grams. That's not a big watch, is it? And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it wears big either, because I don't think it does. Obviously you can bulk it up if you want by buying a bracelet, but I'm not going to recommend the bracelet, and I'll tell you why later. Water resistance today is a very precise 150 meters, and it manages that using only a push-pull crown. Crystal is deliciously double domed sapphire. It's a nice piece of glass, and the movement, I've already given you a clue. It's a Miyota, it's the 9039, it's the no date specific version. No display window, instead you get this simple but neat and tidy laser etched stainless steel case back with the obligatory spec sheet advertising some of this watch's standout features, including the French assembly and the integrated crown. Now this Miyota has 24 joules and a roughly 40-hour power reserve. As we saw from that scrap of paper, this one is running at around the plus 10 seconds per day. Case finish is very simple. It's a simple case. Construction is 3-piece, all brushed mid-case, high polished bezel, and the case back that we all just had a look at. 46 lug to lug is actually quite long relative to the diameter, as you can see here. You can also see here the lugs are drilled, not that they necessarily needed to be because the supplied strap is quick release. Now the bezel and crystal are beautifully integrated. It's a lovely step to each of those, and there's that continuous angle from the edge of the case to the edge of the crystal, and then we get to that crown. Now, of course, I'm sure this isn't the only watch you've seen with this style of integrated crown. Think old school Seiko 5, for example. More on that Seiko 5 later, by the way, but you don't see it often, and you certainly don't see it often from micro brands. The integrated crown does 2 things. It cleans up the profile considerably, and it also ensures comfort. No crown sticking out means no crown sticking into the back of your hand. It actually does a third thing as well, but I will talk about that later. So this is the FKM style Tropic strap, which I was sent the watch with, and I'm pleased to say it's a good one. That material means it's soft, it's compliant, it doesn't gather fluff and dust, it's therefore very comfortable. Those perforations also help with heat and sweat. Now the spring bars are quick release and there's a very nice taper, which means it doesn't visually overpower the small watch head when it's on or off the wrist. Now the hardware is polished. I guess they could have gone either way because the watch case has a mixture of brush and polish, but they chose polish. It has the Baltic logo etched into the buckle. Single retainer is fine because it's not a hugely long rubber strap in the first place. Dial and hands then. Now there are going to be obvious references both here and in the comment section, I'm sure, to the Rolex Explorer because of the applied Arabics at 12, 3, 6 and 9. Which is fair enough, and this watch does also perhaps have the proportions of a vintage Explorer. But there's more going on here today as well. There are applied circular indices in addition to the Arabics at the 4 compass points, and then applied batons at the other 8 hour marks. Please note, none of those have surrounds. No silver surrounds today, they just sit there unsupported and they're all fully loomed. More on that later. The central flat circular section of the dial is surrounded by what I would describe as a little moat. There's a dugout. The train track minute markers are actually recessed just a touch in relation to the dial itself. Now, you barely notice it, but it does give the dial another edge for light play just beyond the Arabics. Maybe you can see that from one of these more dynamic shots when I move the watch around a little bit. Now the Baltic logo is just printed on above the pinion, and Hermetique the model name, and that rather specific water resistance rating of 150 meters printed beneath it. I like the handset today. Finally, we have some high polished silver which helps with contrast and therefore legibility. The hands are flat and both the hour and minute hand are well proportioned. They have fabulously long syringe tips that point all the way to the batons and the minute track respectively. Now the second hand has a loomed lollipop 2/3 of the way down towards the tip and a very small circular counterbalance. So if you've been counting, we have 6 little circles on the dial today, 2 on the second hand and 4 on those compass points. I think the dial looks great overall. There is quite a bit going on, but it still looks simple, it still looks really clean, and it's nicely legible, which is important given the small dial size. On wrist, how does it wear? Well, you saw those dimensions earlier on, plus the soft and flexible strap, plus the disappearing crown. It's very comfortable. It's not a watch I would describe as having a huge amount of wrist presence though. Now I obviously chose the brown one, but none of the other colours are particularly bright or in your face. They do a blue, a green and a cream, you know. They're all a little bit neutral. Now they have done a bit to add some light play with the high polished bezel and that step on the dial, but it's a discreet and subtle look overall from this one. Now I am kind of in between 2 holes on the strap here. Isn't that always the way? So in some of these shots it may look a bit tight, and in some of these shots it may look a little bit loose. I was in and out of the pool with this one throughout Christmas anyway, which does tend to shrink the wrist a bit, so I did go back and forth between the 2 holes legitimately. And that's the pocket shot. Again, this one isn't shouting, unlike my shorts. It's a fairly sophisticated little thing, unlike my shorts. And I suspect that is who Baltic are pitching this one at. People who appreciate a degree of subtlety and sophistication from their watch. Now, subtlety and sophistication rather go hand in hand. So do moans and niggles. Alright, price, as you know, one of my favourite topics. These are 550 euros, or at least they are for me living outside of the Eurozone. Please don't forget to add or subtract your own country's tax liabilities. That's around $600 US. That's not cheap for a 9000 series Miyota on a rubber strap, but I don't think it's ridiculous either. Baltic are a little bit boutique, a little bit special, and they are made in France after all, which clearly has higher labour costs than our friends in the Far East, and it's a very well thought out little watch. So maybe you could count that as half a moan. You could definitely count this as a full moan though, and that's the Lume. Now, you're going to look at this and say, Jody, what are you talking about? That Lume is sensational. And at this point in time, you are correct. It is sensational. It's one of these watches where you come in from outside or you walk into a slightly dark room and the watch just pops off your wrist. It really glows. However, if I turn the speed up on this, you'll see that it fades all too quickly. And by the end of my test, we have moved from sensational to severely disappointing, which is why the Lume is in the moans and niggles section today. Now, as discussed, it's not a big watch today, 37mm in diameter. The strap is not particularly long either. I've only got 2 holes left, only one of which is usable. So if you have 8-inch wrists but like small watches, you're gonna have to fit a second strap or find a different watch. And my final complaint today involves that trick crown. It looks fantastic, it's super comfortable, but you can't manually wind the watch as a consequence. Look, here is the watch, it's run out of juice, it has stopped. I already told you the crown doesn't screw down, so you would expect it to wind from this position. But you can't do that because you just can't get enough grip on it. It's impossible. And if I pull the crown out to the first position because it's a no-date movement, it hacks. You can't wind it from there either. So what do? You do the good old Seiko shuffle, just like those old school Seiko 5s that I mentioned earlier on with their 7S26. That crown definitely causes a compromise then. If this is your daily, it's probably not going to be a big issue, but if it's a rotation piece, that might become a bit of a pain in the arse, and it's not what you expect when you're spending 550 euros on a watch these days, to be shaking it to life every time you put it on. So what is it then? Kind of an explorer? Almost a Gada? Casual daily? If they sold it on a bracelet, it would be easier to pigeonhole, I think. But the fact that they promote this one on a rubber strap is a bit confusing. As I said, they do sell a bracelet. In fact, they sell a couple of bracelets, and I have tried one of them on their other models, but I don't particularly rate the bracelet. I don't think there's enough taper. As such, it's too big, it's too dominant. It would easily overpower a small watch case, a watch head just like this one. I'd recommend just going for the rubber then. That's clearly what Baltic think you should do as well. So if Baltics are new watches for people that want vintage watches, then the Hermetique is a Baltic for people who want something a little more robust than the regular Baltic. More water resistant, sapphire crystal, and I think that rubber strap is very much a statement of intent as well. They make the watch more sporty, and I also think younger. Maybe this is Baltic's attempt to try and attract a slightly younger demographic to the brand as well. And if we look at their press shots, it seems they are pitching this one as an explorer style all-rounder that you can get wet and is worn by the young, the fit and the beautiful. So if you like the Baltic style but want something a little bit more robust and versatile, the Hermetique could be the watch for you. As far as I'm concerned, maybe I need to relax a little bit more and try and stop fitting every watch I review neatly into a box and just enjoy them for what they are. So there you have it. Well done for making it all the way to the end. Why not reward yourself by watching another Baltic review? I'd suggest their micro rotor or a 2-for-1 video on their HMS and bicompax models. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all again in the next one.